大量先进的战略武器，也使美军觉得如芒在背。而对中国来说，美国国防部每年一度的中国军力报告，尤其是其中对中国对美威胁的指责，无疑是美国对华战略警惕乃至敌意的显示。
中美军事热线刚刚建立，那么美国国防部长达7、8年，已经每年都要出台一份美国对华的一个军力报告。同时，我们知道去年11月份，中美之间还发生了一个不大不小的小鹰号风波。所有的这一切都是在我们跟司令基廷以及美国主管亚太安全的助理国防部长辛恩谈话当中所涉及的话题。一起来看一下。
Yeah, Admiral Keating, you mentioned before the military hotline. You might be using the military hotline to talk with Chinese PLA, to about such issues. So, this joint military hotline has been operating so far since a couple of months. How do you generally view, how do you assess the operation of this military hotline?
It works great. I called General Ma several Saturdays ago in the aftermath of the terrible earthquake. It was 9 o'clock in the evening in Honolulu at my headquarters, and it was mid-afternoon Sunday. In a couple of minutes after I picked up the phone on this hotline, General Ma was on the other end. Talking to him was like I'm talking to you now, and we had a very informative, lengthy conversation, about an hour, on relief that we had supplied, further assets that we could consider giving to our colleagues in China, and he spent some time describing for me in great detail the effects of the earthquake. So the hotline works fine. General Ma's voice was very clear, and it was beneficial to both of us to have this real-time communications capability.
Yeah.
Well, it's a learning process, and
right.
I think, as the Admiral has observed elsewhere, one of the reasons why his forces were so quick and so effective in providing, with the rest of the international community, aid to China after the Sichuan earthquake was because of this communication link, and not just the hardware link, but it's the trust and the understanding between the Pacific Commander, for example, and General Ma that was the result of this hotline. And the hotline itself is the result of this effort towards further engagement and transparency on both sides, both by the PRC and by the United States.
General Ma and I have gotten to be reasonably good friends.
Oh yeah.
He's a fighter pilot. I'm a fighter pilot. He's the father of a fighter pilot. Our son is a fighter pilot. So he and I and kind of tease each other a little bit as to who's the better fighter pilot. That's not a subject of hotline. It's a matter of record. Better fighter pilot. Probably our sons. Anyway, he's a reasonably good friend, and I saw him again last night, and we had a very pleasant conversation. So, Dr. Shin's point, the hotline is a way of communicating, but the relationships we're developing are much more important.
Dr. Shin, the Defense Department of the United States has been releasing an annual report on Chinese military since about 7-8 years.
Yes, actually, it was mandated by our Congress.
The
Defense Department to write and issue that report.
At the same time, there were problems. In the last 7 years, there was also constructive dialogue. There are many, it's a learning process, as you said. It's the right word, I think. So within these 7 or 8 years, how do you generally assess this trend of the cooperation or the potential conflict between two armies? So is this trend increasing in positive sense, or rather, do you think you're negative, or rather concerned?
Again, I would defer to the Admiral. Over the long run, I think the general trend has been positive. There's been some ups and some downs. I suspect, I would think probably the cooperation on humanitarian relief would be a recent uptick. I would say the problems surrounding the denial of the Hong Kong port visit last year would have been a downtick. But on balance, I would say it's improving. Would you
concur?
Would you agree?
Further examples might well include personnel exchanges, an agreement by the Chinese Army to let a senior enlisted member from our staff, our senior enlisted leader, as a matter of fact, Chief Master Sergeant Jim Roy, come to China and engage in a dialogue with the People's Liberation Army officials as to the development of a non-commissioned officer corps, which is the backbone of the United States military. And we are also engaging in discussions about exercises that are a little bit more demanding than simple ship maneuvering exercises. Third point I'd make, Peter, is the Chinese had observers here in Thailand for exercise Cobra Gold, which was a 15,000 man strong, 5-nation participant exercise that was very demanding.
Yeah, but actually, Admiral, I once remember you once tried to invite them to participate in this what is called a gold court.
They send observers. So, to Jim's point, it's not a breakneck pace. It's a measured pace that is mutually beneficial to not just the United States and China, but all the countries in the region. And that's an important point we would emphasize. It's a multilateral approach, not a straight bilateral approach.
Yeah. Could I actually, you bring up the question about the China military power report. And as you know, having read it, the content has shifted over the years. And the most recent report, as you know, spent more time than usual talking about not the capabilities, not the military capabilities of the PLA, but intentions.
Intentions, that's right.
It's the intention.
Yeah, I remember.
And as Secretary Gates has said several times in his meetings with Chinese senior officials, we are very concerned about the intentions behind this expanding military power. And this kind of dialogue is one of the ways to reassure ourselves on both sides of these intentions.
五角大楼的高级官员讲的已经非常明显了，美国关心的不但是中国的军事能力，而且是中国的 intention， 中国在军事能力背后的战略意图。那么在过去几年，应该承认中美两军在这方面有一些磨合。美国方面如何评价中美两军过去在战略意图上的磨合？不要走开，广告之后继续为你透露。好，欢迎回到《震海听风录》。那么，美国五角大楼的高层如何评价这个中美两军在战略意图上面的磨合？美国太平洋舰队司令部又是如何评估未来中美两军除了在目前的联合搜救演习之外，也许未来在其他的包括马六甲在内的其他一些领域的协防或者合作的前景？我们一起来看一下。Yeah, regarding the intention of the Chinese military, I remember exactly 1 year ago here in Singapore. You told me that the United States was not only keen to know the Chinese capability, but also the intention. In the meanwhile, you visited Beijing for the second time in January. Yeah, but as you said, Dr. Shin, in last November, the incident, Kitty Hawk, happens, unfortunately. So in the meanwhile, time flies. After 1 year, do you think you have a better understanding of the intention of the Chinese military?
Better, but not sufficient. There's much room for us to improve.
Yeah, in which regard not sufficient?
Transparency is to us a curiously passive sense. You can observe the military equipment a nation has, whether it's submarines, airplanes, ships, soldiers. What one intends to do, what are one's intentions for that equipment? What are the capabilities that are going to be utilized in that equipment? So transparency is not the end game. It's